Hi everybody, my name is Jenna. I'm with Santa Ana College. This is Sayer, and today we are going to be going over some body weight exercises to work the core. You should have just watched the healthy back lecture. So to kind of go over that a little bit, what we're going to be focusing on is working the core muscles, which are going to be all the way around, the front, the sides, the back, okay? Our cores are really, really important when it comes to stability and trying to keep us from injuring our low back. So a lot of these exercises we're gonna do today are gonna work on two components. They're gonna work on stabilizing the core, and they're gonna work on having longer levers to really work on that anti-rotation, okay? So what we're gonna start off with here is we're gonna start off working on the front side first. So Sayer's gonna be my demo, so I'll have you right here on your back. And we're going to start off with kind of a foundational movement, which is going to be the foundation for all of our supine exercises, okay? So the way to make core body weight exercises more difficult, we don't have any equipment, right? It's just us, just our space. To make it more difficult, we either add movement or we make our levers longer through our fulcrum, okay? So there's more force working through the core. But to start, we're going to start with just a simple pelvic tilt, okay? So what Sayer's going to do here is if I were to put my hand underneath her back, there's that arch in our low back. She's gonna tilt her pelvis like she's tucking her tail under and draw her belly button into the mat and flatten her back, okay? So if I'm trying to get my hand out from underneath her, I can't. Or if I was trying to get my hand underneath her, okay, I can't. So that's gonna be the start of our movement. That really engages the core, puts our back in a nice safe position, and makes us nice and strong and stable to then move on to our progression. So we start with a pelvic tilt, and from there, to make it more difficult, we can start adding movement. So we'll go up into a dead bug position. So we're gonna have our knees stacked over our hips, our hands stacked over our shoulders, okay? We can stay in this position and hold, or again, we can make it harder. We can add some movement. So she brings the arms up overhead. We've added a longer lever, okay? Same thing, we can leave the arms here and we can straighten the legs out, okay? Nice and straight, toes pointed. Again, a nice long lever through our fulcrum. Or we can start to alternate, opposite leg, opposite arm, good, and back, other arm and leg. So we're gonna work some diagonals, again, that anti-rotation. To again make this more difficult, she can take one hand and press it into the opposite knee. That knee is driving into her hand. So she's getting a really good contraction through the center, and we can sit and hold that for 10 seconds. Take a break, we can switch sides, do the other leg. Good, and she's gonna sit and she is driving that knee into her hand as hard as she can to get a nice good contraction. Or we can do both arms at the same time into both knees, okay? We can also bring the chest and the head up a little bit, really contract the core muscles on the front and hold. And that's gonna be a really good exercise there, okay? We'll bring the knees down, take a little break there, okay? So again, we've got our pelvic tilt. We're gonna start there. We go into our dead bug. We can bring arms up, we can bring legs down, we can do alternating, and we can do an isometric hold. Okay, to make that more difficult, we're gonna same thing, we're gonna go into a little bit of a longer lever. So from our dead bug position, we can start with the arms down by the side and then kick the legs out straight. We'll bring the chest and head up a little bit, okay? In this position, the longer or the higher the legs are, the easier it is. So if she were to bring her legs up higher, okay, that's a lot easier. She starts to bring them down towards the mat, that's gonna be a lot harder, okay? Again, longer levers. If, you can take a break, if we want to make that again more difficult, we have the legs involved. Now we'll get the arms involved. So we'll bring the legs up. Again, she's still pushing her back down into the mat. Okay, so she's holding this nice pelvic tilt position. Core is engaged, arms up overhead. So this is as long as we can get. We can do a hollow hold, do that for time, or we can do rocks if we want to rock back and forth. And again, get a little bit of movement involved in there, okay? So the way, again, to make these more difficult is longer levers or to add movement. Our core muscles work to hold us up all day, okay? They're postural muscles, anti-gravity muscles. So to strengthen them the best, aside from things, deadlifts and kettlebells and things like that are gonna strengthen our muscles, we need to work on that time domain. We need to increase the amount of time that we're holding positions or the amount of reps, so high volume, because that's how we're gonna get them to work for a really long period of time so they don't fatigue, so then our core goes on, that's how we get low back injuries, okay? So that's, again, our pelvic tilt, our dead bug, and our hollow body hold position. From there, okay, if we want to sit up and we'll straighten the legs out, another variation to work the anterior side, we can press into the ground. She's going to drive one leg down into the ground, then lift the other leg up, okay? So we have just a nice isometric leg raise through here. So she's bracing the core and then lifting one leg. And that's going to really work the hip flexors and the lower core, okay? And again, to make it more difficult, we'll lay back. And we can go with a single leg raise, or we can come down, we can do a double leg raise, okay? So we'll bring them, just lift them up and then back down, okay? They don't have to come all the way back to the ground. They can just come up and then back down. So again, we're really getting the lower core involved there. From there, we can bend the knees and we can come up into our boat pose, okay? So we're here, come up, there you go, okay? And we gotta find that nice balance point because that's gonna be the foundational movement for our next movement. So with the boat pose, we're just gonna hold this position. And again, if we wanna make it harder, we can bring the arms up overhead and kind of have to reposition and find our balance point. Again, core is really, really braced during this whole thing. Or we can lay back all the way down, okay? You can, arms over the head. And what we're gonna do, chest and head will come up slightly as we still do our pelvic tilt and lift one leg, just one, and we'll do our alternating V-up. So there you go, foot to hand. So come up and touch, and then other, we'll switch sides, hand to foot, there we go, okay? So that's our alternating V-up. We can make that easier if that's too difficult. We can bend the knee as we come up and touch the toe, there you go. Okay, so that way, again, we shorten the lever a little bit there. And then if we want to make it harder, we make the lever longer. We can also do a single leg jackknife. Both hands go to one foot. So up together, yep, there we go. And then other side. So again, alternating, we're getting those diagonals in there with a long lever. And then lastly would be just our V-up. Both hands and both legs come up together. Good, just like that, up and down. So she's coming up initially, bracing the core, and then reaching for the feet. So that's our boat pose, that's our leg lifts, and that's our V-up or alternating V-up positions. Lastly, for the anterior side, we also have planks. So a lot of people know of like the standard planks, our high planks and low planks. So we'll have you flip around here. Okay, so a standard low plank on the elbows, forearms are gonna be straight, okay? And the elbows are stacked right underneath the shoulders. So it does a good job maintaining this nice hollow position. The core, again, is engaged right through here. Hands aren't together, they're apart, okay? We just wanna make sure that our shoulders are over the elbows. We're nice and engaged here so we're not sagging through the low back or sagging through the upper back, okay? So she's really pressing away from the ground, maintaining this nice hollow position. That's our low plank. We can also go into a high plank on the hands, okay, kind of our front leaning rest position, similar to a push-up. So we can do either one of those and maintain this nice hollow position for our plank, okay? So this will be just a hold. You can work up 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, okay? From there, to make this more difficult, we can again add movement. So we can be in our high plank position and we can drive a knee to the elbow. Same elbow, okay, so if we switch sides and do knee to elbow, or we can have them come across, so opposite knee to opposite elbow, okay? So again, we're getting those diagonals, working those obliques in there. Or we can do shoulder taps, so that's moving the legs. Here, we can move the arms. We can do opposite shoulder, or we can do same shoulder. But the key here, as Sayer's demonstrating, is she's not shifting her hips a lot. So if we were to really over exaggerate it and kind of go reach for one, okay, so we're not shifting our hips. She's trying to keep the hips nice and straight and then is reaching for the shoulder, Good, just like that. That's where we're getting that anti-rotation aspect. We're trying to avoid that rotation, having the core work to really, really brace to stay in that position, and then adding the movement as the difficult component to it. Lastly, from there, okay, we can go a variation between our high and low plank, which is our plank walkout. So if we start in this nice high plank position, okay, and then same thing, trying to keep our hips as stable as possible, almost like we're in a hallway. We have nowhere for our hips to go side to side. She's gonna nice and slowly move down into a low plank and then press back up into a high plank. Good, one more time, down into a low plank and then up into a high plank. So again, hips aren't shifting back and forth. We're trying to avoid that rotational aspect, and then just nice and slow and controlled going from a high to a low plank. So that's our front plank variation, our shoulder taps, okay, along with our plank walkout. So also in that position, okay, we can do a bird dog. So we will have good hands and elbow underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips as well, okay? So for our bird dog, we are going to reach opposite arm, opposite leg out. There you go, okay? So we're working the back side now. So we work the anterior side initially, now we're gonna work the posterior side of our core, okay? So in this position, we're reaching out, so we're getting the upper back involved. We're also getting the glutes and hamstring involved as we contract through the low back, our erector spinae muscles, okay? And then we can bring them back down and we'll alternate to the other side. Good. And we can just go back and forth. We can hold this position, or again, we can alternate back and forth and get some reps in. We can also bring the arms and leg out and then bring them together in the center and do like a knee to elbow. So then we still work the back side, but we get the posterior side, a little more bang for your buck, okay? So we come apart and then come back together. Lastly would be doing same side or ipsilateral to try and work just the one side and work the lateral side. There you go. Very difficult. That one's very, very difficult. So again, if we didn't have any equipment, that's what we're going to do. We're going to work the anterior side. If we wanted to, if we had some equipment, maybe we have a kettlebell. We could do a kettlebell pull through in our front plank position. We can put our feet up on a Swiss ball or the TRX, add a little instability to it. So we really have to work on bracing that core. To work the backside a little bit more, we can go down onto our stomach. And we're gonna do what's called a Superman, okay? So Superman position's kind of common, but a lot of people do it a little bit wrong in that they think coming up high is the goal. We're not trying to come up as high as we can. We're not trying to overarch the back and get those vertebral bodies really jammed into each other. We're just getting the muscles contracting, okay? So arms are gonna be out in front, legs are long behind us, okay? And if we were to only do the arms, you're gonna see Sayer doesn't move very far. Arms come up off the ground, chest comes up off the ground. That's about it, okay? Not a very big movement. Same thing, if we're gonna do just the legs, she's just gonna contract the glutes, the hamstrings, okay? And the quads come up, the knees stay straight, they don't bend. So then if we put the whole thing together, you're gonna see, again, it's not very high, just ever so slightly off the ground, and we hold. So if we were to over exaggerate that and just try and go as high as we can, that's what it would look like. It's not what we're going for. We're not bending, we're not arching up the back. It's just up a little bit off the ground, get the muscles firing, and we can hold there, or we can do reps. We can go up and down, okay, again, so for some volume. And lastly, we can also do alternating arm and leg to get some diagonals in there as well. So that's our Superman hold or alternating Superman position. Last one, to work the backside, we can go into that crab position. Okay. So our crab position, okay, arms are gonna be underneath the shoulders, and she's gonna push up and drive the hips up as high as she can, okay? So we're getting, again, the low back, the glutes, and the hamstrings firing. If she wants to stay in this position, she can bring the head back, and again, really think about driving those hips up as high as she can towards the ceiling. If we want to make it more difficult, we can add some movement in and go with an alternating toe touch. So same thing, if she brings the hips up, and then she's gonna have to stabilize on one arm and press through the legs, keep the hips up, and one hand's gonna touch and reach towards the foot. Good. Okay, so the key here again is to really keep those hips driven up, not to sag down and bend and touch. We want to keep those hips up high and reach and touch the foot. If this is too much, if trying to do that movement is too much, but this position's a little easy, we can make it more difficult by straightening the legs out and going into our reverse plank position. So same thing, but again, we've made the lever a little bit longer, gonna get the hamstrings really involved here. She can hold here, same thing, she can bring the head back if she wants to, and we're holding this position for time. You can come on down. So those are gonna be what works the posterior side of our core muscles, okay? So again, we're working the front, we're working the back. Lastly, we're gonna work the side. So our core, again, it's like a big barrel, okay? Our diaphragm's at the top, our pelvic floor is at the bottom. We have all these muscles that wrap around, and then muscles that run along the vertebral column that, again, are working to give us our global movement, all of our big muscles, and also the ones along the spine that are working to stabilize the spinal joints to keep us from rotating, keep all those discs healthy, okay? So the last one, we're gonna work the side. A lot of people like to do like a Russian twist, but sometimes that can be a little bit painful with a disc injury or a lumbar strain. So we can go again with something that's a little bit more stable into a side plank. So if we wanna make it easier, we shorten the lever. So we have the knees bent through here. Okay, knees aren't in front. You can see Sarah already set up really nicely. She pulled them back behind her. So when she's up, her knees, hips, and shoulders are all aligned. So when she comes up, okay, she's in a nice straight line. She's not a V. Her knees don't come in front. Her knees are in line with her hips and her shoulders. She's on her forearm. You can also come up on the hand if that's more comfortable. But again, she's driving these hips up as high as she can. If we want to make it more difficult, we'll straighten the legs out. Good, and then same thing, she's lifting up. I like to bring the hand up and kind of pretend like someone's got a string, they're pulling our hips up towards the ceiling, okay? That's the key here. If we start to sag, or if we turn and look towards our feet, or we start to close off our chest, we're gonna get this bend. Now we're working the anterior side. We wanna keep the hips pushed forward, the chest open, and drawing those hips up towards the sky, okay? From there, you can hold that position, again, for time, try and increase the time, how long you can hold it, or we can add some movement. So if she brings the hips up, we can do hip dips. So we're gonna go down and touch, and then drive back up, down, touch, drive back up. Or we can bring the arm around for a rotation, and then opening back up. Again, keeping the hips high. She's not sagging the hips, she's keeping them nice and high. Or we can get the legs involved and go into like a star pose, or we can go into touches and we'll bring the leg in front and touch the ground in front. There we go. And then, yep, there we go. Okay, so again, adding the movement component and keeping those hips up is gonna add that instability component that you have to work on stabilizing. We can also put our feet, same thing, on a Swiss ball or up on a bench, do a Copenhagen side squat, or if we have a band, we can wrap it around the legs, so we start working the glutes as well to make it a little bit more difficult. So these are all of the exercises that we can do to work the core. So again, we're going for high volume, we're going for long time domains, we're trying to add in some rotation, some movement, and working on stabilizing the vertebral column, using the muscles to stabilize the back to try and prevent some injuries. And some of these, again, progressions and regressions. If something is too easy, we can progress it. If that's too difficult, we can go back to the foundational movements. But these are some really good body weight exercises you can do without any equipment. You can do them kind of anywhere to really help keep your back nice and healthy. Thank you.